Welcome to another episode of Some Men Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Battisto. Today's guest, we have Eric Thompson. Eric Thompson is currently an assistant at Arizona State University. In college, he was a three-time national champion for Grandview. In high school, he won 2 state titles for Waverly-Shell Rock High School in Iowa. He was also a Junior Nationals Champion for Fargo back in 2008. Our fan of the week is Tristen Lorraine. Tristen, thank you very much for your comment on YouTube, and thank you for subscribing. We're really trying to build our social media presence, so it would help us out if you guys followed and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as our Spotify. If you guys like what you hear, you leave a comment. Tristen is our fan of the week. So Tristen, thanks for your comment, man. We'll just send us a DM and let us know your shirt size, and we'll reach out to you. Really excited to have Eric Thompson on. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Thanks. All right, Eric Thompson, I'm very thankful to have you on, man. I've kind of been, so I for one, I like Willie Saylor a lot. I pay attention to Willie Saylor, and whenever he talks about a particular coach, I immediately I kind of just focus in. For me, I'm always trying to just find ways that I can personally improve. And I think kind of watching you, you're somebody that gets after it, right? You were just overseas coaching Colton Schultz. I know you work out with a lot of the RTC guys too, right? And it just seems like you're just getting after it the whole time. So immediately I'm like, dude, I gotta get this guy on. I gotta pick his brain a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important, coming up with where I was at Grandview and then at Penn State, I think it's important to be there with those guys and to be on the mat with them, to do those things with them. So, they're not on their own, or you're just sharing in those things with them, right? Whether it's fun or it's miserable or whatever you're doing, you're there with them.
Yeah, I think for one, I think it just it just sounds like your coaching philosophy is really not just really being there for the guy. And I think that's how you kind of build that trust. Because I know with Colton, just again from an observer, it sounds like you have that really close relationship with him. I kind of want to say that question down the line a little bit, but I guess just going back where you started, I know Iowa has a deep culture of wrestling. And I know you went to Waverly-Shell Rock High School. I guess just growing up, because I know your family, you have a lot of families that wrestled in college. I know your cousin, I think, was a world prime medalist and he was a national champ for Nebraska. Do you feel like you had a choice, or was it just nah, I'm wrestling 100%?
I mean, I think it was sort of implied, and to, you want to be like the people that you're around, right? You want to grow up to be your heroes or those people that you strive to be. So for me, we were always at wrestling tournaments when I was growing up. We were always at things, and it was a huge cultural thing for my family that wrestling was important to us. And watching the NCAAs every year, going to the Iowa High School State Tournament, going to watch stuff or be at things, it was always important to our family. So I think for me, is to strive to do that. So I don't know if it was so much you have to do it, or or if it was just wrestling on the carpet with my dad growing up or whatever it was, but it was always something that I kind of just did. Part of my identity. I would probably say too much, but it's definitely a part of my identity is who I am and stuff. So it's been a great process, from the start of it to where winning was everything or whatever it was, to where I am now with my vision of how I see wrestling and how I view it and stuff.
Yeah, so it was kind of the same thing for me. I grew up in a small town or smaller town outside Chicago. So I don't know if you know Glenbard North High School.
Oh yeah.
Abe Assad. And so I was a kid growing up in that. And then 7th grade, I moved to California. But it just was just something that you do. And it's kind of like what you said, your heroes, your family members do it. And it's maybe not something you're necessarily forced into, but it's like you said, everybody's doing it. So it's I'm going to do it too, because I want to be like that.
Yeah, that's right. It's striving, it's like if a kid loves football or his dad loves football, you want to be the guy on the TV then, right? It's the same thing. It's obviously wrestling's not as popular as football, but in some families it's very important, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes though, and I can kind of sense a little bit, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong. Just when you're out and you're maybe away from the wrestling room or a wrestling kind of event, but you see somebody that wrestles, like, do you just fall into that trap of just talking about it to the point where, maybe like your wife or like other people that you're with are like, dude, can you just get away from it for a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I would say I've gotten better about it. As time goes on, because my wife will say I leave her places to go, like, and I'm like talking or something. But it's I think for me is one thing, going through this is some of the people I've been around, just trying to be present in the moment of the things that I'm doing, as opposed to like trying to find a way to talk about wrestling or whatever it is, but it does happen to me still. It does happen.
Yeah, it's hard. So I asked my girlfriend to marry me at, like, I think it's maybe been a month and a half. And
Congratulations, man.
thanks. So whenever I go over to their house, so her little brother wrestles for our kids club, so that's kind of how I met her and stuff. But yeah, I always end up talking to the dad for like hours, to the point where my future mother-in-law and then they're like, oh, there they go again, like talking about wrestling. It's like it's hard not to, like, if somebody asks me, it's like I get so fired up about it. It's hard to stay away from it.
Yeah, it's super specific, right? There's not like a lot of people that, I guess there are, and there aren't a lot of people who know a lot about it. So when you get around people that do, or if they're just kind of ancillary and you didn't ever really talk to them before and you're in a situation like that, then it's fun to kind of hear what they have to say about wrestling or what they think about this, that, or the other thing that's happening in our sport, right?
Yeah, for sure. So you started wrestling. At what point did you like take it really serious? Because you ended up winning two state titles individually for high school, but then you also, I think, were a part of two team state titles as well, right? Um,
Yeah.
at what point were you like, I'm all in on this, like this is what I want to do?
So, like growing up, I went to everything, won Tulsa, won all those kids tournaments, like kids freestyle nationals and all those things. Right. But for me, like the huge, huge, huge turning point was when I got into high school, my freshman year. I weighed like 195, but I wrestled 215 because the state champ was at 189. And so kind of, I think you put high school wrestling on a pedestal, at least I did when I was coming into it, that it was a super, super important thing and how difficult it was going to be and how hard it was going to be and stuff. So when I got to high school, it was difficult and it was hard, but like the things I'd done leading up to that, growing up my whole life, I realized, I'm ready for this. I can do this. So placing at state my freshman year of high school was a really, really big deal for me. It at the time, like, and you'll know as a high school coach, some of our sense of like belonging of like, hey, I'm good enough. Like I'm there, I'm right there to win. It's just one match. It's one tournament. It's one win. It's whatever it is. And all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, I can compete with anybody. I can do these things, So probably placing at state my freshman year, that summer I went and wrestled, everything, every team camp ever invented, every tournament that you've ever heard of. I think me and a couple friends who wrestled like over 250 matches that summer.
That's a lot. Wait, and this is after your freshman year?
Yeah, that spring and summer after my freshman year, we just went to everything, went to every single lift, went to every single tournament, went to every single practice. I was kind of tunnel visioned on having success or being successful in wrestling, because I think for my maturity level hit a place where, in wrestling, like no other sport, your effort, especially in high school, your effort and your training, they dictate how you do in a tournament, right? To mostly extent in high school for sure, right? I think in college it's a little bit different. You have to learn new things or try new things, and probably in high school now as well. But then it was mostly predicated on how hard I worked, and the more I did was the more that I got, like the more success I had. So when I was able to kind of pair those things together in my mind, it was like, all right, let's go do this as much as we can.
Yeah, I think let me kind of unpack that for a sec. So you said you had 250 matches. So that's like, you do like Fargo and like all the big stuff too?
Everything. everything. Freestyle and Greco State, Northern Plains Freestyle and Greco, Vegas, Western Regional, every local tournament, every team camp that I could go to, you know, and I just jump on a random team and wrestle all their duels. Yeah. Everything, you know, I was just obsessed, and I went everywhere and trained.
I get like kind of frustrated with our guys sometimes because they don't like going to the local stuff because it's like I'm too good for it. But it's like you could go and text somebody, but I could, if I watch you wrestle, I could give you, you know, a list of things that you need to work on. And that's kind of the whole point of going. But I guess, like, how do you get kids to buy into that?
I don't know. I mean, I think you just, you know, it's a little bit different now. You know, with like knowing people who are going to be at tournaments and stuff. When, you know, when we go to these tournaments in Iowa, you know, I wouldn't know who was going to be there or whatever. Like, we would just pay our $20 and we go wrestle, you know, 5-6 matches in a morning. And sometimes it was great. Like, I'd have some tough matches and sometimes I wouldn't. But, you know, I think for me at that time was, you know, my high school team ended up being ranked 4th in the country, and we graduated 10 seniors my senior year we were all together for that stuff. We were together the whole time. We were at every lift together. We drove to tournaments together, you know, and I think for us was like that huge bonding of having people hold you accountable around you. And then also, you know, doing that together.
Yeah. I think there's like a kind of just like what you're saying, like there's a big value in kind of like trying to build like your tribe almost, right? Like you have a group of 10 guys. So yeah, we do everything. We do all the camps, we do all the local stuff. Because then I feel like, you know, like if you want to reach the ultimate goal of as a team, it's like winning a team state title, or, you know, in college, winning a team national title. It takes everybody. Like, it doesn't just take the starters. It takes everybody in the room working for that goal. You know, and I think, you know, I think it's kind of comes with a couple different things. Like, if you're, you know, maybe grew up with a lot of those guys, that maybe that bond comes a little bit easier in a way, just because you've known them for an extended period of time. But if you're talking about like college, you know, how do you get those older guys that, you know, maybe come from all these different places? How do you get them to come together and buy into that team concept of, you know, getting a team trophy or getting a team title?
I think kids from all over the country, you know, like, you know, our team's pretty culturally diverse. You know, but for us, they're all share one really super common goal, and that's trying to win a national title. So each guy's done something different, you know, to get to Arizona State, to wrestle for Arizona State. You know, they all have gone to this tournament or that tournament, but what they all have in common is that they had to train hard, you know, and they've done that train, and they've gone through that grind, and they've done those things to try and get better. So I think for them, it's pretty easy to connect over your love of a sport that you want to be the best at and you came to college to. That's what I've seen for our guys is just that kind of bond built over, you know, that crosses all borders and crosses all differences and stuff, is that they want to be good. They want to be really, really good, you know, and so I think that drives a lot of them.
Yeah. Kind of going back to when you were in high school. So you end up winning Fargo. How many times did you win Fargo?
Just once. Yeah.
So, I mean, how much would you say, like going to Fargo and doing these bigger freestyle events, how much do you think they impacted your high school career and then eventually, you know, your college career? So I guess how much did freestyle impact your wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, freestyle was, especially, you know, that was one thing when I was coaching in Pennsylvania. You know, the kids, like, freestyle wasn't as important because all those kids went to NHSCA duels. Yeah. So they'd want to wrestle folk style all the way up until Memorial Day. And, you know, we kind of did it when I was at M2. We kind of did it those first 2 years. And I'm like, this is just it's not that fun, right? Like, it's not that fun to do folk style from, you know, August, September until March, and then turn around and keep going March, April, May, basically June, and then switch to freestyle. And then we only have 2 months. So for us, when I was growing up in Iowa, we didn't go to an HSCA duels. That wasn't like a thing that we did. So it was immediately you switched over because 2 weeks after the Iowa High School State Tournament. Used to be this tournament, McPickford Open.
Okay.
And it would be like they'd have like an old man division too. It was great. It was a really, really cool tournament. Yeah. So we would immediately change gears and start training freestyle.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in high school, like that was just something that you just did. But it's weird, like being in the Central Valley where you look at like the big teams in California, like Buchanan and Clovis, and a lot of I would even say Frontier a little bit too. No one really does like the freestyle stuff. Like I think I don't know, it's kind of baffling. Like I just feel like just from everything from knowing where you're at on the mat versus like how you finish, a particular takedown, just being aware of different things that guys can do. I feel like if you don't really do freestyle, like you don't really get exposure, no pun intended, to those kinds of positions.
Yeah, I think for, if you're looking at it from a technical standpoint, I think for sure, right? Like you have to finish cleaner. You have to be aware of your body and space a little bit more. And for me, I think, now that my son will be 5 here pretty soon, is that like little kids don't like being held down. You know what I mean? Like that's like a 5-year-old worst fear, right? He's getting ridden. So I think freestyle is a great entry point for kids of those age because it's takedown and then it's turn and then you're back up, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're not trying to stand up, that's one thing, coming from M2 and doing the kid stuff is like, just like involvement and made it a little bit easier. When we'd only do takedowns or something, we wouldn't do top bottom until we'd worked on top bottom. So kids weren't like, it wasn't like their first time on bottom was when we went live and they were like, holy shit, this kid's like keeping me down on my belly and I can't get up, right? It's like a nightmare for a little kid. It's a nightmare for me if I get ridden by one of our guys. I can't, I can't remember when I was 5, but I'd imagine it was pretty rough then.
Yeah, it's like for one, it's like almost like emasculating, like to be underneath somebody.
Yeah.
I made that mistake at a kids tournament. It's like kids state or whatever, and I had worked with this kid like a decent amount, and he's 6, so he's like wrestling in the state finals for 6U, which is great, which is crazy to me, but. He's losing, and I can't remember the exact score, but he's losing. He ends up getting reversal, crazes the kid, puts him in his back. Time expires. We go to the 3rd period. It's our choice. So we're winning. We're winning by I think it's either by a point or we're tied. And I'm like in my head, I'm like, dude, we got to go down. We just got out. Let's go down. And the kid like looked at me and looked at his dad. His dad is like telling him to go top, and I'm like, I was like, no, you're going down. And he goes down. He puts his head on the mat. Kid cradles him, puts him to his back, and pins him. And I'm like, oh my god. And then I talk to the dad. He's just mad, but. Sometimes it's just like I don't know. For one, like coaching 6-year-olds is so hard because
it's crazy. It's a crazy person's endeavor for sure, right? Because you're like, why are you so? I remember, me and Mark McKnight would do like 4 to 6-year-olds, and it was like you get done and we'd only go 45 minutes to an hour, and I get done, I'd be like fried, like holy cow, dude! I like my brain stopped working right there.
Yeah, like today I coached little kids for like an hour and a half, and then I met with like some of our heavier weights for like an hour and a half. And the first practice, like I was so tired, but like the second practice is like, all right, we're gonna spar for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're gonna work on a couple positions, and then it's easier, like emotionally.
Oh, way easier, right? Because too, like with the little kid stuff, you just never know who's about to cry. Sometimes you can't like tell who's about to break and cry, and you're like start looking around, making sure no one's on the verge of tears, because you want them to find it to be like an enjoyable experience, right?
Yeah, you just want to make sure those kids come back. Like you don't want them to quit and then never come back again.
Yeah.
So you end up winning Fargo. It was your senior year, right?
Yeah, I actually tore my meniscus like probably like a month before we went, and I remember thinking it was like such a big deal, and I was like, maybe I won't go, maybe I'll go. And then I was like, well, I've never won Fargo. So I went and I won, but I probably should have lost a couple times. I was like losing matches, and then I'd I'd win at like the last second or something. I was being such a baby about my knee. I remember it, thinking about it. I'm like embarrassed by it sometimes when I think about it, because I was like, oh, it hurts so bad. I'm like, it's just a torn meniscus. You're all right, dude.
Was that like your first major injury?
No, I mean, I just got it clipped. It was like literally 2 weeks later, I was fine. But there was a moment where I was like, I was so scared. I was like, I don't even know what I was scared about. But I was wrestling a kid from Illinois. He wrestled at Michigan. I can't
He wrestles
remember.
at Michigan right now?
No. I'm old now. So he did.
I forget. You just look young, man. You just look young.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he was beating me like 6-2, and I 5'd him and pinned him. And I just remember thinking, like, I can't get any more matches like that. I'm gonna freaking lose if I do that again. But yeah, so I won Fargo, and then I got my knee fixed, and it was my freshman year.
Had you already like committed to a school by that point?
Yeah, so when I was 2006 was when Kale took the job, or maybe Kale took the job at Iowa State. He was the head coach then, and then Tom Brands took the job at Iowa, and then my cousin Tolly was at UNI. So I was like, it's funny. My wife was like, "You're never gonna leave home, or you're never gonna leave Iowa or something." I was like, "Well, I didn't really have to. I had like the 2 best college teams in the country, in Iowa when I was growing up. So there's really no reason to leave." So I ended up committing to Iowa State. This is when it was different, right? None of those coaches could call you until July 1st of your the summer before your senior year of high school. So you had like August, September, October, November. So you had like 4 months to make your decision.
Yeah.
It was crazy, but it was fun.
What did Kale, did he call you, or was it somebody else?
No, yeah, it was Kale did most of my recruiting.
What
Kale
was that like?
It was interesting. It was good. It's some of the stuff he did or has done with some of the stuff that I'll use.
Yeah, I heard a story. He was recruiting Zane Rutherford, and it was something like, I want to go on like these other visits first. And Kale's like, well, if you go on these other visits and you don't like it and you come back to me, why do I have to give you what you want? Like something like that. And it's like, I don't know. It makes sense, but it sounds almost like very like, businessman like, right? It's like, we're here to make a deal. Like, I'm here to help you just as much as you're here to help me.
Yeah, it's now that I'm doing it, it's a little bit different, because now it's a little bit more complicated, and you kind of went through it, with some of your kids. I'm sure it's like you want to get some of this stuff done early, as you can, just to feel good about where you are, but you also want to make sure, kid, this is a place where he wants to be. So, and sometimes you just know this is the place for that kid, but it's hard to convince them of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I've only really like had like a couple interactions with college coaches, like recruiting our guys, and it's more so like in the last couple of years now that I've kind of stepped in this role at Frontier. But it's interesting because some of them are like, I know, because either they were my coach at one point, or like I knew them and they're coaching at somewhere, and they're like, sometimes they'll contact me direct. I'm like, hey, help me out. And I'm like, dude, what am I gonna do? I can tell you about the kid and I can pass on information, but other than that, I can't really do too much. Like, it's up to the kid ultimately.
Yeah, of course, right? You just, I think, when I talk to high school coaches, I more so just want to know what the kid's like, outside of wrestling, or even to his teammates. How's he fit in with, the people around him? Is he a hard worker? Is he a nice kid? But my experience is most kids are nice kids. They just have either gotten lost a little bit and they need a little bit of help, or they're working on themselves, but I think when I call a high school coach, I'm just looking for them to tell me, yeah, the kid's great. We like him. He's fantastic. And sometimes that's not what you hear, but it happens, right? Part of asking the question.
Are most of the high school coaches that you talk to about, when you're recruiting kids, are they honest, or are they kind of like, kind of hyping their kids up a little bit?
I think it just depends. I think if, and this is one thing I went through at M2, when a college coach would call me about a kid that was training, at him too, they'd be like, you know, and this is the conversation that we'd have as a staff when we were there, when I was there is, you know, if you lie to a coach about one kid, what's stopping you about when you have the kid who's the real deal? You know, they're not really going to believe you. So, you know, your word means a lot to some, especially if you're telling me this kid's like, oh, he's the best. He's a nice kid. He does a great job. And he comes there and he's partying all the time. He's not a hard worker. He's not, you know, as the bill of sale told me he was. But so then the next time you have a kid, I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know if I really can ask him, you know?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, if you ever ask me about anybody, like I'll probably never like talk bad about a kid straight up, but I might be like, like he's all right. And that'll just be it. But so you're at Iowa State for a year. Did you redshirt? Because I know you didn't start. I don't know if you redshirted or if you were just the backup.
Yeah, so I redshirted at Iowa State my freshman year, and then I was there the next year after. So Kale left and went to Penn State after my redshirt year. And I stayed at Iowa State, and then I was behind Dave Zabriskie, and he won a national title that year. And I didn't go to class. I didn't, you know, that next year I was like, man, I'm like, this sucks. You know, I'm not the starter. This wasn't part of my plan. So I just destroyed the plan. And I actually moved home and I worked at like a Target distribution center. And I was like, I'm never wrestling again. It was crazy, man.
Yeah, I saw your interview on the Bader show, and you were telling me that you weren't going to or you weren't telling me, but you're saying on the interview that you weren't going to class. And you know, I feel like, I mean, I did that a little bit. Like I didn't go to class a little bit, but yeah, our coaches were just on our butts. Like sometimes they'll just say, "Oh, I heard you didn't go to class," and I actually went to class, but I was like that. They're like, "No, I'm just messing with you." Like that stuff would happen.
Yeah.
But kind of going through that, like, I mean, how do you kind of talk? I mean, it just seems like you kind of had this plan. You know, your family like had a lot of success, you know, in college, and you know, you were a 2-time state champ. You know, you kind of come in thinking, all right, like I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to be the guy. And then it just seems like, you know, your head coach leaves, a lot of that coaching staff leaves, and you're there. You know, how do you kind of take that story and how do you, I guess, try to translate into a lesson for the guys that you coach now?
You know, I think for me, the one thing that you know, and you're probably there, like as you get older, it's nothing is as big of a deal as you think it is in that very moment, right?
Yeah.
Like it just, it matters, but how relevant is it? You know what I mean? Like just take a breath, calm down. Like, let's talk through this. How's this gonna, you know, one thing I'll do a lot is like, how's this gonna affect you tomorrow? And then in a week, and then in a year, and then in 5 years? Like, when does this, whatever has happened right now, like when does it stop mattering? And it's always way sooner than it seems it's gonna, and then it seems it will, right?
Yeah, maybe that's just like a maturity, like young person thing, because that's something like recently I turned 27. That's like, you know, in the last couple of years, I've started like, this really isn't that big of a deal. I don't know why like I'm freaking out about it.
No, and it does. It comes, you know, and that's probably, you know, for me, since I've had kids, it's been a lot. You know, I've done it and I've said it and I've kind of believed it before I had kids, but now I know it's true, because it's like not much else really, it matters, right? It all matters because you care, because of how much you care, not because it actually matters to this person or that person, you know. But I think that's one thing, you know, as I've gotten older, that if I could have really had someone explain that to me, it would have made a big difference. Because in the moment, it felt like my world was falling down, like nothing else mattered besides what was happening right then. And if I just could have stayed patient or a little more like even keeled about things, then it would have worked out a little bit differently, which, you know, I'm happy with how my career turned out. You know, so it's not the worst thing that ever happened to me, but if someone would have said like, hey dude, calm down, it doesn't really matter, like this X, Y, and Z is because Y, you know, I don't know, it would have changed things for sure.
Is that something that like, especially like how you feel about your career? I feel like that's super uncommon for people to say, like, I'm happy on how my career ended. Cause most of the time people don't say that. Like I'd say, you know, maybe like 90% of the time people don't say that. Is this something that, you know, Was it always like that since you were done, or was it maybe like, what was the timeline on that?
You know, I think like no matter what happens, you always expected more of yourself, you know, especially when you reach a certain level of wrestling. It's that you could have done more or something. But as I kind of moved myself away from it, I did a lot. Like I tried a lot of things. I trained really, really hard. I tried new techniques as consistently as I could. Maybe not as I could, but you know, from my standpoint of maturity of where I am now and where I was then, you know, I tried all the things that I could try based on who I was then. So I
Yeah.
think for me, it was kind of maybe like a year after the Olympic trials, like 2017. I think is kind of when I just really like, you know, I did a lot of really, really good things. I beat a lot of good people. I wrestled hard. I got better consistently. And then I stopped wrestling, and that's okay. Right. Like for me, that's okay. I mean, I don't know if that goes for everyone, but there has to come a certain point where you're okay, not that you're not going to do this anymore, that you're not going to be driving yourself to the ends of the earth every single day. And that time has to come at a certain point, but it comes different times for everybody. You know, for me, it was just, I was like, I was, I was waking up not quite as excited as I should have been to go do something hard, but I was still doing it anyways. So that's when I was kind of like, you know, maybe it's time to move on and try this coaching thing.
Yeah. I feel like, man, that's a great perspective. I feel like there was a long time where, I mean, I didn't wrestle as long as you, but my last college match was against the Arizona State guy, and I knew I probably wasn't going to beat him. It was a heat, and
Oh,
it got to be, 2019. We were in Tempe, and I just kind of knew, like, weighing in this morning, I'm like, all right, this is probably the last time I'm ever going to make weight, like, which is a hard thing, I think, for competitors to really like think about, is like knowing like you're probably going to lose, which is like something that you don't really want to think about, but it's kind of like just a harsh reality. Like, like I'm wrestling a guy that's, a two-time All-American at this point. Yeah, I haven't even qualified. Like that's going to be a tough draw, but you hope. But I think kind of just understanding, just know I'm just going to go out and fight. I don't know. I guess that's something I can kind of walk away from. And then, I walked on. I walked on to a D1 program and ended up starting.
mhm.
Like, but that's kind of something that I think is hard to put in that perspective that you're talking about, like being happy where you're at, because that's just not, I think, how a lot of people are made, like being satisfied with something.
Yeah, I think for me, like it's just like I look back and I think like, did I get consistently better? You know, and that doesn't mean like was there moments where I moved backwards and I was like, the hell is happening right now? Like, why am I not beating this guy or that guy? You know, it's like we got to realize they're working too, right? They're trying to get better too. You know, it's all of us in this race of like, you know, that's what wrestling is. It's realistically a race who can figure out these things technically and physically, and then you compete against each other to see who's figured it out sooner, right? And I think when you put it in that type of scope, it makes it a little bit it simplifies it a little bit instead of just being like, well, I didn't beat that guy. Or it doesn't simplify it. I think it makes it a little more complicated, but it makes it a little more okay to like truly understand that this is a game and this is a sport that you're just trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's almost like it compartmentalizes things a little bit. Like it's like,
Hmm.
okay, the outcome of this match does not determine like who I am, right?
No.
It's not going to necessarily be the end of my world. Like it's just like, it's kind of like what you said earlier. Like, are you going to have a good attitude? Like, are you going to put in effort? Are you going to work hard? Like those are the things that are a little bit more controllable. You winning a wrestling match, like that's kind of somewhat controllable, but it's like you said, it's like it's a game, bottom line. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, this is like you said too, like it's like something we do. It's not who we are as people, you know, like when I get done with my work day or something, or we I lose a match, or we lose a duel, or we don't do well here or there, you know. When I come home, my wife and I might talk about it, but our kids are still there, and we still have other I still have other problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like I still got other things going on in my life that are also intense. So, nothing crazy, but it's like, I still have other things to deal with, so it's not this end all be all of who we are as people or what we're gonna be.
Yeah. So I know you're familiar with stalemates, right?
Yeah.
Did you
Yep.
end up wrestling on that card? Because I know they tweeted they were trying to get you somebody to wrestle with, I think.
Yeah, no, I never ended up wrestling. That was like was that before COVID?
I don't remember, because I'm not gonna lie, I actually reached out. I'm like, well, who is it? And it was you. And I'm like, I know I didn't really know who you were, but like I recognized the name. I'm like, I think I'm a little bit too small, dude. And you smoking, but but
No, that was when I think that was when I was still I think that was before COVID, when I was still at Penn State. So yeah, I was like grinding every day, and I was like, well, I mean, they were like, yeah, you want to wrestle? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then they ended up not being able to find anybody, and I was like, oh, that's okay, man.
yeah, it's all right. I mean, I think it's fun, like what they're doing. I like their videos. I actually watched it a few times, but it talks about how he left from Iowa State to Penn State. Did you watch that one?
Yeah, they did a good job.
Was that so? You're kind of in the middle of all that. Like, I guess first question: do people ask you about that all the time?
Here and there, but not too much. It was crazy though. Like I remember we landed coming back from the US Open, and there's like this legendary sports writer. He passed away, Dan McCool, and he worked for the Des Moines Register for, since I was like a little kid until I for a really long time. And he wrote a book about wrestling in Iowa. It's really good. But he passed away. But he was at the airport when we landed back from the Open, and he started asking Kale about Penn State, and I was like, "The hell is going on,
dude?"
And like I don't know, I just didn't even think about it. And then 2 weeks later, he took the job.
That's kind of like a gangster move by the reporter, just to show up, like when the team's there, like just, hey, what's up with you? You going to a
Yeah,
different place.
it was crazy, man. It was nuts. Yeah, I don't even know.
So he left. You're there at Iowa State for another year, and then you end up basically quitting, right? You go up and you say
I
you
was
weren't
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like getting recruited to go to Grandview?
I mean, I don't know how much recruiting it was, or if it was more like, for me, it was like Coach Mitchell was like, "Hey, you want to come wrestle?" He's like, "Oh, we'll pay for your school." And I was like, "Done deal. Let's do this, man. I'm on my way." So I was working like second shift at that distribution center. It's horrible.
So you got like some reality hits you. Like, if I don't get a college degree, like this is probably what my life is going to be like.
I was like, it wasn't bad. I was just like, I'm not tough enough for this. I'll tell you that right now, for the next 30 years or whatever I was planning on. I had all these thoughts in my brain about what I was going to do, but I don't know if it could have included that forever. I was like, oh, this is getting real. I got to get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think like college is for everybody. Like I'm a teacher, and I think one of the things that schools kind of do is they push more school on you. I don't think it's for everybody, but I think if you're just trying to figure things out, like that's a very viable option, especially if you're an athlete. Like go to school, try to learn something, make sure you pass and go to class, but like get something out of it. If you have to be here, get something out of it. So I think that's cool that you got brought back in. Do you think you would have been coaching if you didn't get brought back to Grandview?
I don't know what I would have done, man. It wouldn't have been like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I know that, but I'm not sure what would have transpired or happened, but probably nothing good. I just needed to change where I was. I needed to change the people I was with, and so when it was like Des Moines was like 2.5 hours away from where I grew up, and it was like, all right, go there, fresh start, let's do this, and it worked out really well. It was a lot of fun, and met like my wife, a lot of our best friends that I'm still friends with today. So it ended up being it'll go down as one of my favorite experiences in my life.
Yeah, and I think that's cool. I mean, that you were just open about it and just like, all right, I'm just gonna go do it. And it sounds like you didn't even really think too much about it. It's like, here's this opportunity. Let's just go run with it.
Yeah, on my visit, Mitchell was like, he had the scholarship papers, and I was like, yeah. He's like, you want to take a look at them? I'm like, nope, sounds good. Let's do this.
So wait, did you talk to your parents about it, or was it just I'm doing it?
I mean, 50-50. I was like, I gotta get out of here. Like, I gotta go. So it was good.
So you end up winning 3 national titles, and then what I think is cool is you got the NAIA Wrestler of the Year. I think maybe your senior year.
No,
I feel like that doesn't happen with heavyweights that much.
No, I got it the first year I was there.
Okay.
I don't know. I never won another outstanding wrestler award or wrestler of the year for NAIA after that year.
Who else was around? Was that Southern Oregon guy?
Yeah, it was Brock Gutches. But I'll tell you that I told Brock this too. There was one year, our senior year, I pinned or teched everybody, and Brock won like a 3-2 match, and I was like, and he won outstanding wrestler, and I was like, Brock, this is bull crap, dude, and you know it. But it was good. Brock's the man.
Yeah, was that something like intentionally your senior year? Like, all right, dude, I gotta get this wrestler of the year again, and I know Brock is like over there. I gotta compete against him.
Nah, I was more like, I kind of didn't think I'd win it. It was when we were really good. You know, Granby was kind of starting to come, and like, if we win those awards, then we win all the awards. And I don't think that people are going to let that happen. So it's like, all right, sounds good.
I get that. I mean, you know, I guess there's an equity thing you have to consider in that circumstance. So we kind of already talked about this a little bit. So I guess you get done competing. And what was like the timeline going from competing to coaching? Because I think you were coaching a little bit for the Nittany Wrestling Club while you were competing, right? As well as them too.
I left Grandview in 2000, like May of, like right after I graduated. So May of 2014, and I moved to State College, and I trained through 2016 Olympics. And then in 2016, 2017, I coached at Lock Haven for a year. And then I went back to the NLWC as a coach. And then David Taylor opened up to him too, and I started working there.
Okay. I guess like just being around David Taylor and like those guys, like you were there when Gilman was there, or was that after?
Yeah, so Thomas was there. Thomas and I were there for maybe just a year together, a little less than a year.
Yeah. I guess like from like a coaching and I guess like an infrastructure perspective, just with clubs and organizing that with RTC and just the college program, are there things that maybe you have like major takeaways from just that experience that maybe you're trying to develop now with ASU, and that you're working with Zeke and the other guys at ASU right now?
Yeah, the nice thing is like Frank Molinaro's here as well. So yeah, and Zeke is anything that's going to help us become more successful. Like, let's try it. So it's been good to kind of do some of those things that I've been, that I was doing previously to here. So we've kind of adopted some of that. And it's helped a lot. I think guys are, it's just the stuff we're talking about is not, just staying a little more even keeled about your wrestling and about who you are as a person and enjoying wrestling.
When you think about like one thing that I think just in my first couple of years of coaching is like how important like having like training cycles and not doing the same damn thing every single day. Because I feel like maybe less in college, but I just was, as soon as I saw it's like how guys were performing at the end of the year, it's like something's got to change. I mean, how do you guys approach, I guess, like your training element at ASU? You don't need to give away any secrets, you don't want to, but
I mean, that's something that's not really much stuff that we brought. Zeke has his own system that's been working, and it's consistently worked for us now. So I think that's something that he's come up with and worked with a lot of really, really smart people to come up with and like you said, just not doing the same thing every day, changing things up, making sure people are enjoying coming into the room and enjoying getting on the mat, and just making sure when you're in there, making those minutes count.
Yeah, I think one thing that sticks out to me about Zeke is so I pay attention, like, just when he was at the Olympic Training Center and he was coaching, the U.S. national team, and then when he made that switch to ASU, when we would duel them, or this was a big deal because I can't remember who the ASU guy was, but we had a guy and they were wrestling in the Pac-12 finals, and Zeke just keeps throwing challenge bricks, and I think like each team could only have, like, it was like 3 or 5 at the time, and no one was really keeping count. It's just like, I'm not saying he's cheating or anything like that, but like, I feel like he's such a gamesman, like when it comes to just understanding the rules and like what's the best thing that we can do to help our guys. Like, and that's something that I think is, this is a game. It's like, how can you best use the rules of the game to aid what you're trying to do?
Yeah, of course, right. That's for sure. That's for sure something, and he generally knows that stuff. Like, if you ever have like a math question for Zeke, it's like pretty incredible. He'll like, boom, like, 482 divided by 12. He's like, oh yeah. And then he just rattles it off. It's crazy, and he's like looking at me like, that's right. Right. I'm like, I haven't pulled my cell phone out yet. Like, I got nothing for you right now. But yeah, I mean, he's as good as anybody with that stuff, just knowing situations. I think he's second to none on that.
So wrestling internationally, before you really got into coaching, you already had that relationship with him, right? Before you went
so I wasn't really on any trips with Zeke. The first time I met Zeke was I came out to ASU in 2014 for when the World Championships were in Vegas. It was at 2015. 2015. I was Zach Ray's training partner for World Championships. So we were in Tempe for like 2 weeks. So that was kind of my first time really around him, but he wasn't, I can't remember. I think he was running stuff. I can't really recall, it was a long time ago. But yeah, so that was kind of my first meeting with him. And then, when I got interviewed for this job was my second one.
Well, so what made you want to, I guess, take this job at ASU?
So I'd known Frank for a long time, and then 2021 I went with Levi Haynes to the World Championships, the Cadet World Championships, and coached him there. And then Coach Pritz was on that trip as well. And so Coach Pritz and myself kind of connected, and he's hung out a lot and talked wrestling and everything else. And then he got my phone number. I literally landed in Phoenix, or in State College, and then Zeke called me like the next day, and I was back out. I flew out to Tempe like maybe a week later, kind of like for a couple days, and then just interviewed and stuff and met people and talked to them, and it was good.
Yeah, Lee Pritz is the man. I've talked to him a few times, but I know when he applied for the Cal State job, like, he was one of the guys that I thought was very like upfront and honest. Because he ended up not taking the job, but that was like one of the things he told us, like, I'm not going to just take this job if I think it's going to be, I don't want to use this program as a stepping stone. But I just appreciate, his honesty, and he's been at ASU for a long time. I don't know how long he's been there, but
I want to say 11 years, 11, maybe 12. Maybe this will be his 12th year. But yeah, Pritz is the man. He's the best, dude. He's a great teacher for me, as far as recruiting goes, and just, how to do some of these things. So he's been really, really helpful with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I think one thing that doesn't get talked about too much, and you can go, I guess, as into it or not into it as you want, but when these coaches make these big changes from, like, you were at State College and then now you're in Tempe, how do you get like the wife and the family like on board with that when it's time to, hey, like, I want to go to a different place? Like, how do you have that conversation?
Yeah. It's not easy.
Go as into it or not into it as you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think for my wife and myself, I hate to speak for her, but I think it's scary to move, right? Specifically 3,000 miles across the country. you know, but we're a team, and we operate as a team as much as we can. And this is part of, as we talk about it, this is kind of part of our adventure. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to make choices. Some will work out, some won't. You'll kind of go back to the drawing board. But this is part of our adventure, so I think for us is that just enjoying that and kind of going through this together and making team decisions, for ourselves, my wife and I, and then for our kids, right? Trying to put them in the best place possible, but I think this has been a great place. We've enjoyed Tempe, and we actually live in Phoenix, but yeah, we love it here. I don't know if you've ever been out here. It's fantastic. It's really nice.
Yeah, whenever we duel, that would be fun. And then being just finishing my last college match, and then like getting to be older in the town a little bit. Yeah.
Tempe's great.
Yeah. So so ASU had some periods where maybe they weren't as successful on the mat, and that was like something that from an outsider, it was like, oh, just because the college life at ASU is, has this reputation. I know like college, like the college experience, it is what it is. And I think there's a time to be really serious about your training. And there's a time, I think, to just be smart with how you're spending your time away from the college room. But I guess kind of just knowing ASU's college life reputation and wrestling being a very like serious sport, I guess, how do you have those conversations with your guys? Or is it something that, for the most part, they come in, just the culture of the team is so solid and making sure those guys are doing the right things?
Yeah, I think that's it right there. It's the culture of our team, like you guys, as much as we want to say you're a coach or you're a steward for these guys' careers, right? And you try to point them in the right direction of their choices and, do X, Y, and Z. But I think it comes down to recruiting the right kids for your program. The kids who want to be at a place, and what's their reasons for wanting to come to Arizona State? Is it to party? Like, all right, then pass. Like it's okay. There's a lot of other kids, who want to be here to train. And for us, I think you can look out and see that there's 360 days of sunshine and think that there's going to be a party every day, but there's a party every day at every university in the entire country, right? Yeah. You've been to college. I've been to college. You want to find people to go out on a Tuesday night. You don't have to look super far. No, but
not that I've tried, but if I did try, it wouldn't be hard.
Yeah. So I think that's just being realistic about that. These guys have to make choices, right? Like, is that something you're going to do? Because if that's something you're going to do, then go do it somewhere else, right? It's like we are very serious about winning a team national title here, and those are the types of decisions and the decision makers that don't win national titles.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of that, like, what were some things that I guess, yourself, Coach Jones, Coach Pritz, and Coach Molinaro, what are some things that you guys talk about of how to go, from ASU, contending for a team trophy to winning a national title? What's that process like?
It's just trying to get these guys better.
It's a hard question.
It is. It's you just like, you can't, for us, you can't make someone be who they aren't, so we have guys on the team who are right there for a national title, right? We have contenders. We have guys who can win a national title. Obviously, if all 10 of our guys could win national title, we'd be talking about our team title from last year, but unfortunately we're not. So just trying to help these guys get better at wrestling. You know what I mean? Yeah. Get stronger this summer, get better at wrestling, get better in positions, get better at, just some of the little stuff, like, because if it's the same thing every year and you can't figure out why you're not getting better, it's because you're not changing anything. So we talk about like just having the courage to change, right? Because changing your wrestling, changing your lifestyle, changing your sleeping habits, changing your studying habits, all those things are scary. They're scary to everybody. Change is scary no matter who you are. But having the courage to change and do those things are what the best guys in the world consistently do. They're doing it all the time. They change who they train with, and then I'm saying like a revolving door, but like making choices like, okay, so I did this last year, but I felt like I could have done this and this is what I needed. So let's try this year. And then, okay, well, doesn't feel like I'm getting there. So then but making educated guesses on what you need and then going with it and sticking with it and committing to those things is something that we talk about a lot, but they have to make those choices on their own, and we have to steward them to what they want to do and try and help them get there.
Yeah. I think definitely being very process driven is what it sounds like, right? Just trying to do the little things right. And also doing the little things smart as well.
Mm-hmm.
How much does, I would say, just with the NIL and transfer portal, I mean, how much does that play a factor in just, how you've maybe traditionally gone about doing things versus, I mean, how much has that changed, I guess, what you guys are doing, your approach to recruiting, developing guys, and I guess, just managing resources?
Yeah, I think it's tough. It's a tough landscape out there, right? And it's hard. But NIL has changed things. It changes how you manage your roster, changes, and transfer portals change that as well too. Luckily, we've been the recipient of more kids than we haven't been. Then we've had kids leave. We haven't had too many kids that have transferred. And I think that speaks to the relationships we build with kids as a staff, right? I think you treat a kid, and this isn't every situation, but I do think it's some of them, right? You treat a kid well and you have the resources for him to train with good guys. We have a very good RTC. We have good people training consistently that can push most college kids in the country. So I think for us is treating kids with kindness and helping them get better at wrestling and not being, maybe that traditional wrestling coach that everyone's had, and being something maybe a little bit different where, like you said, process driven, where you're trying to help kids get better and making sure that they realize that this is their career and their choices are going to have consequences, later on down the road, how they feel about their wrestling career. So I think not losing kids that way has been something that we've done a good job of.
Yeah, definitely. Just from what it sounds like, I think sometimes with some of these bigger programs, and you probably know them as much as maybe as I do, it's like sometimes it's almost like this is a straight up business, and if you're not producing, we're going to go to the transfer portal, we're going to find somebody else, or just things like that, right? And I think like that's kind of frustrating because I feel like it kind of dissolves maybe to some degree the spirit, I think, of what the sport is about. It's like trying to be the best version of yourself, but also I guess that's kind of subjective to the person and the coach, right? But it sounds like you guys are not just about winning, but winning the right way.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot. It's you can go out, you could go. I think we saw it this year. Is a lot of kids transferring from a lot of good schools to other good schools. And I don't know. I can't speak to financially what that means for them and their families, but it can be, I'd imagine some of these programs losing those kids, that is disheartening. But if a kid's, I think this is one thing I think, right, is you treat a kid well, you build a relationship with them, you make him grow, mature and grow up a little bit, and you work with him on that, they don't transfer.
Yeah.
Those, what I mean? Like, and maybe that's maybe me being naive, and it could be, but I don't know that the coaches I've had really good relationships with, that, whatever the situation is financially out there, if that would really matter if I'm doing okay in the place I'm at, or if I have that relationship with the coach at the place I'm at.
Yeah, I think it's even just thinking about it now, I think sometimes like it kind of gets blown out of proportion just because you look at, well, there's 10 or 11 All-Americans that were in the transfer portal this last year versus the year before. Mm-hmm. I think Maybe the big one, I think it's just Real Woods. I can't think of anybody else. Most of those guys, like I see a lot of guys though, they're like from this year, they're graduated. Like they already graduated college. Like there's not just like they're just up and leaving. Like that's actually a very small percentage.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it for maybe next year and the following year, but that'll start to go away with the COVID year dissipating, right? Like these kids won't have that COVID year to kind of do. So I do think, I hope, that it slows down, unless I think kid's in a situation he really doesn't want to be in, then obviously that's something that they shouldn't stay in. But I do think it will slow down with some of these kids who are, especially the grad transfers, because, they say they get a 6th year, then it's kind of, but I think in 2 years, you'll see a lot less because, you can't transfer a bunch of times. You can only transfer, it'd be once in your undergrad. And then there's some other rules in place that make it kind of difficult for, commitment wise for a school financially, with scholarship rules and stuff, that make it difficult to give a kid a lot of money. So, for a scholarship. So I think that's something you'll start to see people slow down on, I hope, or, whatever the future holds, right? It's kind of crazy out there.
Yeah. It's like, you can't really control the situation too much. It's like, there's kind of bigger powers that kind of make those decisions, and you just, to some degree, have to kind of just deal with it. Hopefully, my thing is just like the NIL situation is just ridiculous. Like, I think it's great for kids, but it's hard on those smaller programs, especially like, you hear about all these things, and I'm not sure if you've had any like personal experience with guys and et cetera, but the fact that you have, people like DMing like kids, like, hey, go in the portal and we'll give you this. I don't know. Like I hear about it enough from different coaches, and then I don't know. I just think it's ridiculous, and it's not good for wrestling. It's good for the kid, like I said, but
yeah, you want a kid to, get their worth and feel like they're valued and stuff, just like anybody does at their job, right? But like you were saying earlier, the spirit of college athletics and stuff, it's just it's a tough line to walk. If you're a program like, and you just kind of want to know what.
We had this weird beeping that was going on, and I think I actually got down to the bottom of it and why it was happening. But we were able to deal with it. I had to cut part of the conversation out. I ended up asking Eric Thompson, what are some things that you learned from your athletes? And we went into a great conversation about coaching. So we're going to pick up right from there.
Robert is like really mean or really aggressive, or, like not even mean, but just coaching them harder didn't make a difference.
You're kind of like atypical, like college coach, or just a coach in general, just hard on them and always on your butt about things like not being like that.
Yeah. Right? I think fighting that in the, innate need to, like, when something doesn't go exactly right, instead of truly evaluating like their talent or evaluating how they did based on that, you know what I mean? Like based on their actual effort and output. That was one thing I think that changed me for the better, was coaching at M2 and coaching little kids and stuff, because you can't put it all under a microscope and be like, well, he sucked this match, so he's not good. You know what I mean? Because you're all ebbing and flowing with your wrestling all the time based on, if you're changing things technically, if you're changing things, you change whatever you're training or anything like that. Some of those changes, you don't always know when those are going to go to effect and how they're going to make you feel and what's going to happen. So I think just really trying to evaluate kids consistently and watching them and watching their body language and those things. But there was a couple kids at M2, for me, that I just really enjoyed, the fact that they always tried hard, and starting to appreciate, effort-based rewards more than true success based on like a finishing at a tournament or something.
Yeah. And I think like you said, I think with younger kids especially, that's kind of like a hard thing, because it's like we talked about earlier, they become so like, I want the trophy, and if I don't get the trophy, like I let everybody down. I kind of had to catch myself a little bit this year. I kind of, leading up to our state tournament, there was like a high pressure match, and kind of overstepped a little bit. I kind of stepped in front of my assistants, and I had to kind of check myself a little bit, and I felt like there was a call that needed to be made, and I ended up making the right call, but I ended up pissing off those people, and that probably wasn't the good thing to do. But I think it was a good learning moment. But kind of just checking, like, okay, where are we really at? Like, again, it's a game. We want the kids to have fun, and it doesn't need to be the point where, like, if we're in a big arena and there's a lot of chaos going on, if you're a kid that looks in the corner and you see your coach just this kind of face, it's like, dude, like, why are they yelling at me? Like, I'm not yelling at you. I'm just trying to, like, get over, the chaos, like parents yelling, like the whistle, like all that stuff. But just trying to, I think, have a good presence, especially in the corner. Just trying to make sure guys, like, kind of stay present and stay calm. And
that's a huge part of it, right? Just in the corner, like being that rock for a person, because I do remember, like, coaches like, go, 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 like that. For me personally, and I think kids are changing now. Like, they don't need that. They just need direction. Like, hey, you're good. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. Maybe try this, just trying to lead them there instead of forcing them to go to where they're thinking about going, just being like, hey, think about this, think about that, think about this, try this, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but not making that they don't do it, make it the end all be all, right?
Yeah. Trying to get away from that. But, I got a couple more questions. So one thing, just because I've been at ASU a few times, I think it's a really beautiful campus, and I really think the facilities there are fantastic. Coaching there, like, what are some things that you would just appreciate about the campus being at ASU?
Yeah, it's beautiful, right? It's 360 days of sunshine. I appreciate that. Our guys, and that's, we were talking about a little bit, like, guys doing things right or wrong. We have kids who are getting, our team GPA was at 3.25 this year, and we got 7th at the national tournament. So our guys are making good decisions in the wrestling room, in the classroom, and outside of that, right? Otherwise, everything would fall apart. So I think that our guys are really starting to see the benefits of being able to be in the sun, like being out in the sun, getting out, and that's, it's all year round that our guys have the opportunity to do that. Our guys are leaving practice in December with their shirts off.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's something that, I love that. I love the sunshine. I love, our administration caring about wrestling. That's a big one for me too. I think that makes a huge difference, right? Anywhere you're at, if your administration cares about it and they see the success that you're having and they're excited about it, it makes a big difference. And just the support that Arizona State has all around, and the people we have around the program.
Yeah. And there's like a pretty big ASU wrestling history too. And I think maybe that's something, sometimes, I don't know, like, some people forget about that sometimes.
Yeah, it's crazy. They started wrestling, and they've had it continuously since, I want to say, the 50s or the 60s. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but we have alumni stop in all the time that wrestled in the 60s and the 70s. And they've had a lot of success. When Coach Douglas was here in the 80s, they won a lot, and they had a lot of success. So they've done those things. So we know it can be done, and we're getting there.
So I got one last question for you. So coaching can be a very time-consuming job, especially like if you're traveling to international events, traveling even just during the season to different competitions and dual meets, etc. Recruiting, right? Especially like guys in different time zones. I guess, like, well, plus me, like, just trying to get you on your podcast. How do you find like that work-life balance with everything that goes on?
I'm not sure that I've nailed it down as well as I would like to think that I have, but like I said earlier, just when you're doing something, being present in it, and it's easier said than done at times, but I think I'm getting, like we talked about, everything comes with maturity. As I get older, it gets a little bit easier to kind of, do those things to when I'm with my wife and kids, I'm with my wife and kids. When I'm recruiting, I'm doing that. When we're training, we're doing that, and then just trying to be present in the moment that you're in, and then, when you can make, like a decision to be home or be gone, or you're not totally needed, but just working as a staff, I think we do a good job as a staff, like kind of spreading out that kind of work and doing those things.
Yeah, I have to catch myself sometimes because I'll be like driving somewhere with my fiance, and she kind of knows like I'm very like thoughtful about things. She's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, oh, "I'm thinking about like what kind of gear we need to get and like our inventory, and then like when that needs to be ordered, and then we have like I'm thinking about like a million things." It's hard for me sometimes to stay present. So like I like asking these questions just to guess, because I feel like, again, that's something I think everyone has to deal with, and especially somebody that's very passionate about something. Like it's hard to kind of separate those things. But yeah, I think like what you said. Yeah, go ahead.
Especially in a world we live in now with cell phones and stuff. It's not like I get done with practice and it's over, or like, what I mean? Like the guys stop needing help at 6:00 every night, or they stop having issues every Friday night and they're fine until Monday. What I mean? That's just not the world we live in. And I'm accessible by my cell phone all the time, so just trying to manage that and just being disciplined with it, like, hey, I can deal with this problem. Is it dire?
Yeah,
I'll deal with it a little bit. Like if it is dire, then let's do it. But it like, but just kind of grading those things correctly, and then dealing with them accordingly, because otherwise, the mountain of work that you could possibly put yourself under is pretty large, right?
yeah. Somebody else told me that too. It's like, read the situation. Like if it's something that it might be a big deal for them in the moment, but it's like, all right, let's take a step back. This could probably wait till tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't need to I'll text you back tomorrow, but and just leave it at that. But yeah, I definitely think I need it. I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I got like a little bit less than a year before the wedding, so I can dial that in. But
yeah, it just takes time. It's like you'll start to, and that's like anybody, you fall into a rhythm, or your role, all the roles you carry in your life, and carrying them, because they're not equal, right?
Yeah.
Like my father is not equal to my job as a coach, not equal to my job as a husband, and it's always shifting, so just trying to carry those roles, at the proper weight, and carry them at the proper times, and those things.
There's like there's this book that me and my fiance are reading right now. It's like 365 days before you're married or something, and it's like a question every single day. And one of them was like, rate like what are like the most important things in your life. So I rated like faith and family and wrestling, and it's like, all right, how much time do you spend on each, and is that like relate, like how does that work out with how you rated them? So it's like, well, I spent most of the time like wrestling and coaching and teaching, but that's number 3 on the list. So
yeah, it's hard, man. It is. And it's like, someone says it's easy, they're lying. It is not, like, because you're doing all these things, and you're trying to be all these things to all these people, and you want to do the job appropriately. And there is a way to do it, but you got to find the way kind of on your own, right? Because it's different for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, I appreciate having you on, man. It's been great. I had fun. I feel like I learned a lot. Yeah, I guess like what is next for ASU? You guys are finishing up your summer training. When do the guys come back to school?
So the guys will leave. So we've had a good group here through July, doing like a 5-week lift. We had camps, and then we had all that stuff, or all the lifting and working out in July through RTC and stuff. Colton and Zahid and our girls wrestled in Budapest, and then they'll be back training here for the next couple of weeks, as we kind of build up to the world championships. And then our college guys will come back. I think first day of school is August 17th. And then we'll work into it slow and start building into those things, and kind of get them going and get ready for the season. Summer goes quick.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll let you know once this drops. So it'll probably be not this week, but the next week. So I'll let you know, and then I'll send it to you.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Later.
Yep.